Hey guys, welcome, welcome. Hang on, I just always have to check to make sure that I'm here and actually live. Haha, we're good. All right, awesome. All right, everybody, welcome to this live broadcast. Excited to have you here. Haven't done one of these for a couple of months since July, and so I'm excited to be here and to have a chance to talk to you guys a little bit. So we had 400, almost 400, it's like 397 people that pre-registered for this event. So we're going to give it just a minute here for people to kind of collect and get here in the feed. We had about 50 people that were waiting when we were ready to start. So while we're waiting, why don't you say hi, tell me where you're from, and tell me what you harvested from your garden this week. I'm interested to know what is happening in your garden. We are, of course, doing tomatoes and cucumbers and zucchini like crazy. I will probably pick the first of our spaghetti squash this weekend, and we've got some butternut squash as well that's ready to go. And we're digging potatoes like crazy. We're about done with potatoes. We finished up our onions, digging our onions this week. And then raspberries. It's raspberry season right now, so we're getting lots of raspberries. We also finished the last of our peaches that's, excuse me, this week as well. So let's see. Michelle's saying, in tomatoes and squash in Florida, adventures with Sam, peppers are still coming for you. We're just barely starting to get our peppers. What else? Who else? Chicago harvested pie pumpkins and zucchini and tomatoes and spaghetti squash. Awesome. Hi from Idaho, tomatoes, tomatillos, beans, raspberries, pears, and artichokes. Cool. All right, guys, welcome. So let's talk about what we're going to go over today. I'm hoping to keep this to about 45 minutes to, at the very most, an hour. We're going to talk about hoop houses, one of my favorite topics. So we're gonna talk about hoop houses and some of the things that we can be doing in our hoop houses. I've got about 10 minutes of teaching for you, and then we have some time set aside for the prize drawing and also some time for questions as well. So let me see what we have here. Big thank you to Honest Seed Company. So I decided that I wanted to do this live broadcast, and I shot an email to Rod over at Honest Seed Company and said, hey, you guys want to give us some prizes? And he totally came through. So he gave us 15 gift certificates. We've got 10 $20 gift certificates and 5 $25 gift certificates. That's a total of $325 worth of gift certificates that they gave. We're also going to give away a 3-month membership to the Gardening Academy. So that gives us a total of $400 that we're going to be giving away during this broadcast. And that's all possible to Honest Seed Company. So thank you. If you guys haven't had a chance to go check out their website, they're a great little company. A lot of the stuff that we're growing this year came from them. I'm excited. 2 or 3 of the new things that we grew this year came from them, including we've got some popcorn that we're growing out front. It's called Blue Shaman. And I'm excited to see how that does. The plants are amazing. They're like 10 feet tall. And we've got at least 2 or 3 ears of popcorn on each stalk. So I'm excited to try that out here pretty quick. And then we got our San Marzano tomatoes from them as well. And they're amazing. We've been loving those. So thank you to Honest Seed Company for sponsoring and giving the prizes. It's really awesome for them to do that and to be so willing to sponsor these prizes. Okay, let me just turn myself off here for a second. A big part of this broadcast today is to celebrate a new mini course that we just launched on the Gardening Academy. So I do a monthly mini course on the Gardening Academy, which is our paid membership. And this month, the mini course, which is about 55 minutes long, is on extending your growing season using hoop houses. And that course just went live today. So it is live. All of our members are enjoying that already. And so we wanted to kind of celebrate, number one, because this was a really time-intensive course for me to film. It took a lot of effort and a lot of time. And so I was excited to get it out and wanted to get as many people as possible hearing about this fun course. So that is available. There's a link in the description of this video if you want to go over and check that out, and you can join the Gardening Academy. You get that course along with, there's about 40 other courses that are available when you join the Gardening Academy. So check that out. Link down below. Okay. All right. Sounds like my voice is going to give out already. So here's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to take a little bit of time and we're going to talk about hoop house gardening. We'll take about 10 minutes and go through and talk about some of the basics of growing in a hoop house. Then we'll do some prize drawing. In fact, I'm going to announce the first 5 winners here in just a minute. We've got 16 winners to announce, so I'm going to kind of scatter it throughout the broadcast today. So we'll announce some here in just a second. Once we're kind of worked through some of that, we'll do a Q&A session. I'll have, anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes for us to spend on Q&A. We did have a few people that pre-submitted questions. So people that had signed up for the course, they pre-submitted some questions. So we'll answer those first. There's 5 or 6 of them. And then we'll kind of take some questions from the group here as well. So please stay on topic with your questions. We're here today to talk about fall and winter gardening in hoop houses. And so keep your questions related to fall and winter garden for the most part. I'm not going to answer questions on, seed starting and stuff like that right now. We're focusing on hoop houses. So my wife AJ is upstairs with another computer and she is following along in the feed. And as you guys ask questions, she's going to copy them over. And I've got another computer here next to me. And so if you ask questions in the chat, she will check those out. But why don't you hold off on your questions for just a few minutes until we actually get into the course. That way that gives her a minute to kind of sort through all your guys' hellos. So, all right, wow, we're up to 123 people already. Awesome. Okay, so let's do this. Let's give away some of the prizes first, okay? All right, so the first 5 prize winners are winning $20 On a Seed gift certificates. So you'll be able to just use these on their website to pay for some seeds. And they have a great selection. So our first 5 winners are Mark B, Jennifer B, Redana J, Justin B, and Alicia B. Okay, so congratulations to all of you guys. That's cool. And as what I did is we had 380 plus people that registered in time for the drawing. I put your names into a random number generator and it spit out the 15 winners. So congratulations, that's the first group. Now, you got to stick around because I've got a bunch more to give away. We still got 10 more gift certificates that we're going to give away, plus the 3-month membership to the Gardening Academy as well. So stick around for that. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll get started on the actual lesson, and then we'll get to some questions. Okay. All right. So the first thing that I want to talk about is what is a hoop house, and this is one of my hoop houses that we have in our garden on one of our raised beds. And a hoop house is essentially a series of ribs. And let me go to this next slide. I call them ribs. Okay, so they're made out of PVC pipe, and then we put a ridge pole on them. So you can see in this picture, we've got the ribs, the hoops, essentially, of the structure. And then we put a ridge pole on, and that kind of gives everything rigidity and makes it strong so that it handles wind. Now, you can, of course, attach these to a raised bed, which is what I've done here. And then if we go back to this picture as well, that one's actually attached to a raised bed as well. It's hinged, so it opens up really nice. You'll see that in a minute. But you can attach them to a raised bed if you want, or if you want to out in your garden, you could drive those poles into the ground. If you really want to make sure that they're secure, you could put some rebar in first and then put that PVC pipe over the rebar. It doesn't have to be PVC pipe. You could use some metal electrical conduit as well. That is more expensive, quite a bit more expensive, because you also have to buy a bender. So you have to buy a bender to get it bent into that shape. But those would be even more long lasting. But PVC, the ones you're looking at in this picture, I've been using those for 14 years now, and they're still holding up and still going strong. So PVC is a really good option for choosing to build a hoop house out of those. And then once we're done with that, then we cover them. So we're going to cover those guys up with one of two things. You're either going to use a plastic And that's usually when we're getting later into the fall and the temperatures are getting colder. Or if you're gardening in the wintertime, you're going to use plastic on those. Or if you live in some of the warmer areas, like maybe zone 8 and 9, you might just cover your hoop houses with a heavy fabric row cover instead of plastic. The heavy fabric row cover will last a lot longer and will be a little bit more breathable. It'll give those of you that live in the really warmer areas the protection you need from frost, but you don't need as much protection as those of us that live in the cold, snowy areas. And so you're going to do one or two of those things. And then, of course, those hoops can also be used for a bunch of other stuff. You can use them for shade cloth in the summertime. You could also cover them with like a light fabric row cover or a bug netting for pest protection as well. So those hoop houses can be really handy. I have gotten to the point now to where we use our hoop houses almost 365 days a year. So we'll have, wintertime, we'll be doing gardening inside with plastic on. Then once things start to warm up, I take that off and we'll use it for shade cloth in the spring to keep our lettuce from going bitter. And then as the season progresses, we'll put some light fabric row cover on top of those hoops to keep the pests and the bugs out of like our leafy greens and our kale and brassica family plants and things like that. So they are super, super handy to have. Now let's talk about how much time a hoop house can add to your garden, because this is actually the real key and the awesome thing about hoop houses. If you're not worried at all about gardening in the wintertime and you just want to extend your growing season, a simple hoop house covered with plastic can add 6 weeks to either end of your growing season. So you'll be able to plant 6 weeks sooner in the spring. You'll be able to get crops inside those hoop houses 6 weeks sooner than you would otherwise. And so if you get those guys out there and get the ground warmed up a little bit, you can plant your brassica family, your lettuces and kales and root crops and all that kind of stuff 6 weeks sooner than you would otherwise because of the protection that they're going to offer. And then it's very easy to get 6 weeks longer harvest in the fall. So when we again kind of switch over to those cool season crops, our lettuces, our kales, our root crops, your extension will add another 6 weeks at least to the end of your growing season. And that's pretty much for everybody. Whatever your growing season is, a hoop house ought to add 6 weeks to either end, which is 3 whole months of extra growing time. Now, you're almost exclusively going to be growing cool season crops during those times, but it's really going to extend and give you greater ability. Even people that live in like cold zones 3 and 4 and 5, you're going to be able to add that extra time to your growing season because of those hoops. It's just an amazing, fun thing. 3 additional months easily in those gardens. And so that's really good. What do they cost? You can build a pretty simple hoop house for under $50. Even the ones that I have, the hinged hoop houses that I have, which you'll see a picture here in just a minute of that, even those I can build for around $50 or so. So if you're going to go even simpler and just attach them straight to your raised bed, so you're not having to buy as much lumber and stuff, then easily you ought to be able to build a hoop house for well under $50. That's easy to do. But the key is with that, we don't use fancy greenhouse plastics. Instead, we just use painter's plastic. The fancy greenhouse plastics are way more expensive and don't give you that much of a benefit. And so the painter's plastics, which are much cheaper, you can buy a roll. Just the other day, I bought a new roll of 25 feet by 10 feet, and it was like $19. That was the most expensive part, and that's enough to do 2 hoop houses. So you can really build these very inexpensively. What kind of crops can you grow? So for the most part, we're going to be using these with the plastic on them for fall and winter and earlier in the spring. And so we're going to be focusing on cool season crops. So here we're talking about leafy greens, which would be lettuce and spinach and kale and collards, all of the Asian greens, all of those are going to be part of what you can grow and extend your growing season using a hoop house. Another thing that you can grow in hoop houses is all of the root crops. So again, these are the root crops. So I'm not talking about potato crops. I'm talking about root crops. So things like carrots, beets, turnips, radishes, even rutabagas, those you'll be able to plant in a hoop house and get that extra time, either on the end of the season or the beginning of the season. And then the brassica family. And you can see, I think in this picture, there's some broccoli and then a bunch of kale that we grow in our hoop houses. In fact, we already have a hoop house right now that's full of kale. I have a fabric row cover over it right now. It will turn to plastic later. And, so those are the types of crops that we can grow in these hoop houses. And it's the other thing that's really advantageous to them is you'll be surprised how delicious those greens are when we're able to protect them and preserve them, but yet they're still in the cold. That cold changes the starches in those plants into sugars. And so the carrots are amazing. The turnips are fantastic and delicious. Your lettuce is going to be sweet and crispy. Your spinach will be amazing. And even kale, which sometimes kale can be very strong, but even kale mellows and gets sweet and delicious. And so growing in these cooler times of the year just has so many benefits. Okay. All right. If you are interested in it and you live in zones 6 through 9, like I do, I live in zone 6B, you can actually harvest all year long. So we have, in our hoop houses, we have harvests that last 365 days a year. So you do in those, especially in like zone 6 and 7, you do have to do some of the hardier plants. So kale, spinach, carrots, tatsoi, collards, mosh, claytonia, those are very hardy. So in zone 6 and 7, that's what you're going to be planting in hoop houses. In zones 8 and 9, the sky's the limit. You're going to have all of the cool season crops you're going to be able to grow. But in those zones with a hoop house, you should be able to have a year-round harvest, okay? In the colder zones, zones 3, 4, and 5, it's a little bit harder to get year-round harvest with just a hoop house. Usually you have to have a greenhouse or a cold frame in order to make that happen because you need a little extra protection. But in zones 6, 7, 8, and 9, you should be able to have year-round. All through the winter, you should be able to harvest something out of your cold frame. And I've been doing that for 14 years, so I'm not just blowing smoke. We've been doing that in hoop houses for 14 years now. So that's fun and pretty cool. All right, one thing that you do need to be aware of, and this is kind of the last thing that I wanted to talk about today with hoop houses, is planting times, okay? So we've already, and a lot of you that were around for the lives that we did back in July, we talked a lot more about this. We've already kind of slipped past the opportunity for us to plant seeds. So 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost is kind of the target. So a lot of us have slipped past that date. My first frost date could be as soon as 2 weeks from now, 2.5 weeks from now. Probably here the last few years it's been mid-October, so we're probably more like 4 weeks, but it could be as soon as October 1st for us. So we're a little bit late to plant seeds, but we still are fine to plant transplants. So if you've been growing transplants on your own, lettuce, broccoli, spinach, all of those, you can put those out and anytime between 2 to 4 weeks before your first frost, or you can go to some of your local nurseries. And a lot of nurseries are starting to catch on that people want to be gardening in the fall. And I've found that it's fairly easy to find, broccoli, cabbage, collards, kale, transplants that you can put in your garden this time of year. And so now is especially the time for a lot of us to be putting those transplants out in the garden with the anticipation of putting a hoop house on them as soon as the weather gets cold. So as soon as we start having threats of frost, that's when we're going to put those hoop houses out, okay? All right. I forgot. I was done. Okay. All right. So I didn't want to spend a ton of time today. I kind of want to honor you guys this time. It's Friday, and I know that you are probably wanting to get on to other things. We're up to almost 140 people here, so thank you for being here. I did want to mention that we do have that the mini course that we have on the Gardening Academy that just launched today. So it's a brand new course. Gardening Academy members are taking advantage of it right now. So if you would like to learn even more about how to grow in a hoop house, plus I actually show you, demonstrate how to build 3 different types of hoop houses: a temporary hoop house, a fixed hoop house, and a hinged hoop house. Okay, so I show you how to build all 3 of those as part of that mini course. So it's about 55 minutes long, and it's part of the Gardening Academy. So I would encourage you guys to go check that out in the link down below. Okay. All right. So let's announce some more prize winners because we've got so many to get done. This is again for the last of the $20 Honest Seed gift certificates. So here are our prize winners for these. We've got Cynthia S., Darcy F., Heather P., Christian S., and Anita E. Congratulations to all of you that have entered, and somebody's saying, I want a prize, okay? So congratulations. So we've still got 6 more prizes to give away. So we will get to those here in just a minute. Again, just a reminder that if you would like to learn more about growing in hoop houses, that hoop house course is now available as part of the Gardening Academy. And there's a link in the description of the video that you can click on to go check that out and learn more about it. Okay. All right. So let's do some questions. I'll do 3 or 4 questions here. Then we'll announce some more prize winners, and then we'll tackle some of the questions that you guys are submitting in the feed as well. Okay. All right. So remember with the questions, and let's see, I can make myself big now. There we go. All right. So remember with the questions, we want to keep them related to fall. Okay. So hoop houses, fall crops. I'm not going to answer seed starting questions today. I'm not going to answer how to deal with tomato hornworms and things like that. Okay. We're going to talk about fall related questions today. So if you've got some questions, go ahead. My wife AJ is keeping track. I already see we've got quite a few. I apologize. I want to respect everybody's time, and so we're going to try and keep it to 45 minutes at the most. So I may not get to everybody's questions, but I'll try to get to as many as I can. Okay. All right. So let's tackle them. First, I have a few questions that were submitted in advance. So we'll tackle those. First is Christine A., and she lives in Missouri. And she's saying, how much protection do I need to give my fall crops in order to harvest them? So it really depends on how long you want to extend that harvest. So if you're only looking to, go 2 or 3 weeks past your first frost date, then you probably would be okay just putting a hoop house over it and using a fabric row cover on it. A heavy fabric row cover would probably be enough protection. But as soon as we start to move into, November, and the wind starts blowing and the weather really starts to cool off, that's the time that you want to up the level of protection on your hoop houses by including some plastic on those. And you may still put the fabric row cover on the inside for extra protection, but if you put that plastic on the outside, it does a couple of things. Number one, it holds the heat in. So it holds the heat from the day's sun inside the hoop. And then it is going to keep the wind from drying out your plants, because ultimately that wind, along with the freezing temperatures, is the biggest enemy to your plants. And so having that plastic on your hoop house is going to protect those plants from that. So, again, if you're only wanting to get, an extra 2 or 3 weeks, then maybe a heavy fabric row cover would be enough with most crops. But if you want longer, then go with the plastic. Okay. And then also, Christine wanted to know how to overwinter asparagus. And I thought we're talking about fall, and this is something we do in fall. So, Christine, based on where you live, you're in zone 6. I would say that you probably are going to want to not depend on the snow. So snow is actually an insulator, believe it or not. When it snows and you've got a good layer of snow, that actually insulates the ground and will protect those asparagus crowns. But you're in zone 6, which means you probably have melting, and then it freezes, and then it snows again, and then it melts. And so I would suggest that you put some mulch on top of that asparagus, maybe 4 to 6 inches of either straw, or you could use like chopped up leaves or something like that, but you want to put some mulch over the top of that bed to keep those crowns protected over the wintertime. And that's what you need to do there. Jim is asking, do the sides of our hoop houses need to go all the way down to the ground? So it kind of depends on where you're set up. If we're talking in a raised bed, then it just needs to go down to the edges of the raised bed, not all the way to the ground. If you're setting them up in like a garden, in a main garden, then yes, you're going to want that plastic to actually go all the way down to the ground, and then you're going to either cover that plastic with some dirt, or you're going to put down some heavy fence posts or something to hold that down. The idea is we want to keep the wind from being able to get to our plants, that cold wind and then the frost and cold at night and the snow. We want to keep all of that away from our plants. And so we do want to have that closed off during the coldest time of the year. Now you can vent on the sides if you want in the, early in the fall and later when it starts to get warm again in the spring. But for the most part, when we're looking at the cold time of the year, we do want that plastic to go all the way down to the ground. Kelly asked kind of a long question that I'm just going to summarize, and it's a good fall question about cover crops and what she should be doing for some cover crops. So she's wanting to do a cover crop of buckwheat and also some snap peas that she has left over, and use that as a cover crop to kind of do some soil improvement on a couple of her beds. But they also have some type of an issue right now that's not allowing them to be able to get out in the garden and do a lot of digging and stuff like that. And so she doesn't want to have to dig in those crops this year. And so she's wondering if that would be okay for her to plant those as a cover crop and then just let the frost and snow kill them and deal with it in the spring. And absolutely, yes, you can do that. That you're actually targeting two different nutrients with those two crops. So if you wanted to do buckwheat and peas, the buckwheat is going to help build the soil, loosen the soil, but its main benefit is phosphorus. It pulls phosphorus and helps make the phosphorus more available in the soil. The peas are going to set nitrogen. And so those are both good options for you. And you could just leave those. The buckwheat you would want to get planted right away because it's going to get killed with the frost. And so, if it looks like you've got about a month, a little bit more than a month before your frost comes. And so you would want to get buckwheat planted like today, if you could, because it takes about 30 days for it to get established. And so as soon as the frost comes, that buckwheat is going to get killed. The peas, on the other hand, are going to last a little bit longer. You could interplant them, plant them together, and the buckwheat will die off and get killed. And then those peas should continue on a little bit later into the fall. Both would be good options for you, okay? Dorothy, who lives in Chicago, is saying, what vegetables can she plant in September? And also, is it safe to transplant at this time of the year? And yes, the answer is yes on the transplanting. It's a good time to be transplanting trees and shrubs and things like that. Cool time of the year is good for that. Also, if you're talking about vegetable transplants, then now is a good time to be getting those in as well. And then, in September, you're a little bit late in Chicago because I'm assuming you're probably zone 6 or zone 5. You're getting a little bit late for planting by seed, but you could definitely put transplants of things like kale, collards, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, spinach, lettuce. All of those kind of things can go in this time of year. Okay, Greg's question isn't really related to fall, but my answer is related to hoop houses. And so I went ahead and put his question on here. Greg says, what is the best method for controlling weeds and insects in the garden? Okay, so I'm all about organic. So we don't do chemical sprays at all in our garden. The strongest spray that we use is neem oil, and I don't even use that very often. So I'm all about organic. So the organic things that I'm going to do to control weeds is have drip irrigation systems. That's going to help your weeds a ton to not have sprinklers going on your garden. If you use drip irrigation, that's going to help a bunch. And then also to put down mulch. So a good solid 2, 3, maybe even 4 inches of mulch in your garden. You could use leaves, you could use compost, you can use wood chips, whatever you want to use. You can put that mulch down, and that is going to help to control your weeds. Now, pests, that's where the hoop houses come in. So hoop houses are fantastic for controlling a lot of pests in your garden. because you can put a light fabric row cover over the top of your hoop house in the summertime, and that keeps the bugs out. So it keeps your cabbage lopper, the little white butterfly that lands on things and lays its eggs, can't get in. Leaf miners can't get in. Aphids can't get in. Whiteflies can't get in. The moth that lays tomato hornworm eggs, all of those things. And so having your hoop houses and then covering those with a light fabric row cover is really going to help to keep the pests down in your garden organically. Okay. All right. And then the last of the pre-submitted questions is from Hugo. And Hugo is wanting to know, when do I recommend planting fall garlic? So I always, there's no such thing as anything other than fall garlic. So you always should plant your garlic in the fall. That is the best time. You're not going to get a dependable harvest if you don't plant it in the fall. For me, I try to plant about 3 or 4 weeks after my first frost. Okay, so our first frost usually comes within the first week or two of October. By October 15th, we've had at least one killing frost. Sometimes it's not right until October 15th, but a lot of times it's around October 1st. So I will usually try to go about 3 or 4 weeks after that frost. The key is you want it to be cool and the weather to be, shutting down and everything to be kind of cooling off and shutting down. But we don't want the ground to be frozen yet. Okay. So for me, that's November 1st. For you, that could be November 15th. It might be December 1st. I don't know, because I don't know where you live. Or it might be September 15th. It really kind of depends. But kind of use that 3 to 4 weeks after your first fall frost as a target for planting. Is what we want. Is we want those garlic bulbs to start getting root development, but we don't want any top development. So we don't want to plant them too early in the season, because then they'll sprout and get tops. Now that's not the end of the world for garlic, but it's not the best situation. So we want to plant them at a time where they'll start to develop roots, but they won't get any top growth. Okay. So like I say, 3 to 4 weeks after. Okay. All right. Let's see. That's the last of this pre-submitted questions. Let's do the rest of the prizes, and then we'll look at some of your guys' questions. It looks like we've got quite a few here. So AJ's busy copy and pasting right now. So let's do, these winners are the ones that win the $25 gift certificates, and we've got 5 of those to give away. So again, thank you to Honest Seeds. The winners are Chelsea C, Mike S, Kelly M, Kathleen M, and Ruth S. Okay. Now, everybody that has won, congratulations. I will email you. Okay. So you entered the contest and you gave me your email. I will send you an email and to confirm that it's you, and then we'll send you the gift certificates and you'll be good to go. Okay. So congratulations. I'm going to take one more drink, and then we are going to give away the 3-month membership to the Gardening Academy, and that is going to Jenica S. So congratulations to Jenica. She wins a 3-month membership to the Gardening Academy, which is a $75 value, and congratulations to her. For those of you that don't know, the Gardening Academy is our monthly membership service. That is where the mini course that I talked about on hoop houses that's where that is located. And it has, along with that, it has almost 40 other courses that we kind of go through, and different topics. We've got a garden foundations course, we've got canning courses, we've got tomato growing, potatoes, just a plethora of different topics that we cover. And then on top of that, we do a monthly planting guide for all of the different garden zones with a video and a printable for you. And then we do a live Q&A, and this is a private event. It's not like a Facebook event, and it's actually hosted on Zoom so that you guys can ask me your questions. And so we do a couple of those a month, one in the afternoon and one in the evening on usually the 3rd Thursday of the month. And then on top of that, we do a whole bunch of other stuff. We do garden tours, we do recipes, we do every once in a while we'll have an expert come in and we'll do an expert interview. And so a lot of fun stuff happening in the Gardening Academy. So congratulations to Jenica. She gets a 3-month membership to the Gardening Academy, and I will send those out. And somebody's asking, do you have to be present to win the prizes? No, you had to pre-register. So You didn't absolutely have to be here to win. So congratulations to all of the winners. And again, thank you to Honest Seed Company for making this a big prize giveaway. It was very cool. And we had almost, like I said, almost 400 people that pre-registered. And so I appreciate you guys being here. That was very cool to see that many people interested in it. Okay. All right. So let's see if I can answer a few more questions here. I'm going to make this. Turns out my eyes are getting old and I can't read quite as well. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and make myself bigger again. And we are 35 minutes in. So let's go another 10, 15 minutes or so. We'll answer a few more questions. Okay. So Fran is saying, what is good to grow in a hoop house in zone 5B? And Dorothy is also saying what can be grown in 5B in the winter. Okay. All right. So you guys are a little bit colder than me, but not impossible. In fact, if you haven't heard of him already, Elliot Coleman is the kind of the guru of winter gardening. I learned from him and his books, and he lives in zone 5. Okay, so he learned how to do all of the winter gardening stuff in zone 5. So in a hoop house in zone 5, you ought to be able to still grow carrots, spinach, kale, maybe collards, tatsoi, which is an Asian green, mosh, which is a salad green, claytonia, which is another salad green. All of those should be just fine in zone 5 over the winter. Okay. If you had a hoop house, there would be a few more things that you can add to that. There's going to be a lot more leafy greens that you could add. You could probably get some beets and turnips to grow through the wintertime as well in a cold frame. But in a hoop house, they don't offer quite as much protection as a cold frame. So you're looking at kind of some of those basics. Okay. All right. Adventures with Sam. Can I grow peas under a hoop house? Zone 8B, technically 8A. Absolutely, you could. Okay. So he's saying, and could you get them all winter long? Well, peas, the one thing about peas is that they're kind of a one and done type crop. So they don't extend. They're not like tomatoes or peppers that continue to produce. So you'll get a crop that may last as long as maybe 4 weeks or so, and then it'll be done. But you can absolutely grow peas under a hoop house in zone 8 for sure. So, and in fact, probably you could still get them planted now in zone 8. It's too late for us in zone 6, but in zone 8 you probably still have some time. So definitely peas, and you could. Shelling peas would probably do okay for you, but especially like sugar snap peas and snow peas are going to do awesome in a hoop house this time of year. And they don't need to, they're not bee pollinated, so you don't need to worry about that either. Okay. All right. Deanne is saying, can beans and peppers start in a greenhouse and then transplant them and use a hoop house to get the harvest? Okay. The problem with those warm season crops, beans, yes, to some extent. As long as you can guarantee that the temperatures inside your hoop house stay above 32 degrees, you could do that, okay? But the problem is with like tomatoes and peppers, they don't like temperatures below 50 degrees. And you're probably going to struggle to keep a hoop house above that temperature at night, okay, without some added heat. And so anything below 50 degrees, even though it's not going to kill peppers and tomatoes, it's going to stunt them significantly. So I would almost say that you should use your hoop house for other things, cool season crops, getting your peas and beans and well, your peas and your broad beans and your broccoli and cabbage and all of that planted extra early. Use your hoop houses for that, and then your tomatoes, there's some other things we could cheat with, but peppers really need to wait, especially peppers, until it's warm, okay? All right, Dorothy is saying, can I still plant, she's in Chicago, can she still plant cucumber seeds this late in the season? My understanding of Chicago is you are zone 6, zone 5, and so the answer to that is no. You don't have enough time. Cucumbers need 60 days, 60 to 70 days in order to harvest. And you don't have that much time left before your frost comes and your cold weather comes. So no, it's too late for cucumbers, okay? Connie is saying, are your PVC pipes 10 foot long, okay? They all start out that way. That's the length you have to buy them, is 10 foot. But mine used to be that long when I had 4 foot wide beds. So at our last place, we had 4 foot wide beds and we did 10 foot posts. But with the ones we have now are 3 foot wide beds. We did that on purpose because we're getting older and it's easier to reach into the middle of a 3 foot bed. So the 10 foot poles were too high. They made these really high, awkward hoops that I didn't like. And so we're actually, with those 3 foot wide beds, we're now 7 foot high is how high those posts are. So they're 7 foot long posts. We cut 3 foot off of them to make them the height that we really wanted. So you have to buy them in 10 foot lengths. So just play with it. Put it in your bed. See what you think. Do you feel like that hoop is too tall? If it's too tall, cut a foot off and try it again. And if that still feels too tall, cut another foot off and try it again. You're going to be somewhere between 6 to 10 feet is how long those hoops are going to be. But I would experiment with them a little bit. PVC is not terribly expensive, but so you could experiment a little bit. But I would just take one and do a couple of different heights and see what you think. Okay. All right. For the fabric or the plastic, this is TD is saying this. Opening. How should it be fastened in order to keep out pests? One of the issues that I've had in my garden was ground pests. But mostly flying pests, okay? All right, so a fixed hoop house or like a hinged hoop house is probably going to do an okay job with ground pests, but hoop houses are not going to be as effective. Now, they're still going to help, but they're not going to be as effective with ground pests. So like earwigs, they will do a pretty good job with slugs and snails. But earwigs and sow bugs and some of the beetles and stuff like that are not quite as effective. Hoop houses are very effective against flying pests. So anything that flies and lays eggs and leaves caterpillars behind, those are going to do really well. So you just need to make sure that those openings are closed up so that they can't get in. And for the most part, they're going to come along and see that fabric and get discouraged and move on to somebody else's garden. So as long as you can do a relatively decent job, you're not going to be able to do a perfect job of keeping them out. But if you do a relatively decent job, it's going to vastly improve. The amount of aphids that we have in our garden now compared to what we used to before we started using hoop houses is just amazing. Now we still get an occasional aphid in our hoop houses, but it's nothing compared to what it used to be. Same with like the caterpillars, the cabbage caterpillars and stuff. Those, just huge difference because of those hoop houses. What is the spacing between your hoops? I try to get them about 3 feet apart. That will kind of depend on your bed. I would say you ought to plan on at least three hoops, okay? And space them out just kind of depending on where your size is. So if you only need 3 hoops, then you're going to put 2 at the ends and then 1 in the middle, whatever that spacing is, okay? But if you're going with 4 hoops, I wouldn't go much beyond 4 hoops. Maybe 5 might be okay. You're going to try and space those out about 3 feet. 2.5 to 3 feet should do pretty good for you there, okay? What is the best way to attach the fabric or the plastic to the ribs? Okay, so it depends on how long, and I'm sorry, this is Karen that's asking that. Karen, thanks. It depends on how long you want the hoop house to be up. So if it's just a temporary hoop house, like, for example, I will throw a hoop house up over my fall broccoli plants quite often because they won't quite be ready. So about the time mid-October, late October rolls around, we start to get really cold and our broccoli isn't ready yet. And it needs 2, 3, maybe 4 more weeks in order for it to be ready. I'll throw up a temporary hoop house. And in that case, I just take some clamps and attach the plastic to it and throw some rocks on the plastic and that's it, okay? when I'm doing a more fixed or permanent one, I like to use furring strips. So you just buy those little inexpensive furring strips. You can get an 8-foot length at all of the big hardware stores for like $1.50, and they're about an inch wide and a half an inch. They're about an inch tall and about a half an inch thick. And you can just pre-drill some holes into those and then pull the plastic down on the side of your bed and then put that furring strip on and then drive a couple of screws through it, and that furring strip will hold the plastic on. And that's the same thing I do with my hinged hoop house. I put furring strips on. That way, it's pretty easy to take it on and off. And you're not, if you staple it on, then you're tearing the plastic to get it off and all that kind of stuff. And so I like just to put a furring strip with a few screws in, and then when I'm done with the hoop, and maybe I want to put fabric row cover on it, or maybe I want to put a shade cloth, but I don't need the plastic anymore, I can take that off and put it away, and I don't tear it up and ruin it. So that seems to be the easiest thing for me. All right, what are we looking at? We're 45 minutes in. Let me take another drink. I'm going to go maybe another 5 or 10 minutes. Valor or AJ, let's call it quits on the questions. So we've got questions that have submitted, and we're going to stop with Carolyn's. So Karen will be the last one, okay? And then we'll call it quits for the night, and we can all go enjoy our weekend. All right, so Marie is asking, what is the best way? Oh, we already answered that one, sorry. Sherry, what size pipes do you use for the ribs on your hoop houses? Good question. So those are 1/2 inch PVC pipe. You don't want to use the 3/4 inch for a couple of reasons. When you go to 3/4 inch PVC, there's 2 different grades. I can't remember what they're called, but one is thicker. It has a very thick wall to it. The other one is very thin walled. Both of those are a bad advantage, okay? Because the thick walled 3/4 inch is going to be really hard to bend. The thin walled 3/4 inch is going to bend and break relatively quickly. So it will age in the sun and break relatively quickly. So the 1/2 inch seems to work the best. It also fits well over rebar. So if you want to put it over like a piece of 1/2 inch rebar to put something up in your garden, that works really well. So I use 1/2 inch PVC is what we're going to use there, okay? Amber is saying, I have a lot of winds. How thick is the painter plastics do you use, and how do you keep it from flapping in the wind, okay? So I keep it from flapping in the wind by using the furring strips. That attaches everything down, and then depending on whether you're doing a hinged one or if you're doing an open-ended one, you're going to collect those ends and use some clamps or something to kind of hold those ends together. To keep it from flapping around in the wind, you may need to add a few clamps here and there to kind of help as well. But the furring strips, by using those furring strips, that holds everything down really well. And so that's kind of my suggestion there. Thickness, the thicker you go, the longer the plastic is going to last and the more durable. So 5 or maybe 6 mil is about as thick as I would go, because anything beyond that is probably going to be too dark. I'm looking for the word. It's not going to let enough light in. So anything above about 6 mil, it's probably not going to let any light in. So, and the other problem is when you get up to like the 5 and 6 mil, instead of it being $20 for a roll, it's $40 or $50 or $60 for a roll. So it's much more expensive. So for mine, I use 3.5 mil or 4 mil plastic, and that seems to work well. It lasts me usually 2 or 3 seasons. The key is you need to bring it in the summertime. You can't leave it out. But usually, a 3.5 or 4 mil plastic is going to be okay to use. All right. How high should the arch be, and how do you determine the lengths to cut? Okay, so the height kind of depends on what you're going to be growing. So for me, the tallest crops that we grow in a hoop house are going to be broccoli and kale. And those get around 3 feet tall, especially kale. Broccoli, maybe a little bit shorter than that, but kale plants will get about 3 feet tall. And so I try to have my hoops about 3 feet in the center. If you're planning on growing something that grows a little bit taller than that, then you may want to make that taller. And like I say, the way to figure that out, though, is to experiment. So PVC always comes in 10 foot lengths. So get a 10-foot length and put it in the ground and see what you think. And it's, you know, it's going to depend on how wide your bed is. So if you have a really narrow bed, a 10-foot length is going to look gawky, and, you know, it's going to be way too tall. If you've got wider beds, then you're going to have a much smoother curve. And so you kind of just have to experiment. So get those 10-foot lengths, put them in, see what you think. And then if you feel like it's too tall, you can cut it down. Or you could just leave it at that 10-foot length if you want as well. I cut mine down a little bit because I wanted them to just be tall enough, 3 feet tall, for the crops that I grow in them. And then that helps limit their wind resistance, if that makes sense, okay? So you kind of just have to play with it and see. But at least, I would say at least 3 feet, and then you'll just have to play it. It really depends on how wide your beds are, okay? When watering plants inside the hoop houses, how do you prevent it from freezing over, okay? For one thing, you don't, in the wintertime, you don't need to water, okay? And I know that sounds weird, but you don't. In the winter, you're basically just preserving the crops. They're not really doing a lot of growing, okay? And so I stopped watering in zone 6. I stopped watering my garden about right towards the end of October, maybe the first part of November. It kind of depends on what the year's been like. But after that, I'm done. And so, you know, once I put my watering system away, once the frost really kind of settles in, and the hoop houses and the cold frames have to go in, and I have a PVC watering system too. And so I put that away after it kind of becomes cumbersome, and I will water with a hose for maybe a couple of weeks. And then about the time November 1st rolls around, I'm done watering. It doesn't need to be watered. There's enough kind of latent moisture in the air and then in the soil, and we don't have the evaporation. The plants aren't using as much water, and so you should be fine, you know, from mid-November to first part of March without watering at all. And often I don't water until middle of March. So that winter time, you don't really need to worry about it. So you don't have to worry about it freezing, okay? All right, AJ says I'm at 51 minutes. So we've got 2 more. Janetta says, maybe I missed this, but what is the difference between a cold frame and a hoop house? Good question. So a hoop house, you saw pictures of the hoop house earlier. A cold frame is a box. Okay, so a cold frame is a box with a glass lid on it, either glass or plexiglass. And they're much shorter. They're usually only maybe 12 inches tall at the back at the most. And so we use cold frames for growing shorter, less hardy plants. Cold frames offer a lot more protection, but they're much bulkier and would be way too expensive to build great big ones. That would turn into a greenhouse. So cold frames are basically just a wooden box with a glass lid on top, and usually we'll angle those a little bit. They'll be a little bit shorter in the front than they are in the back. So that's the difference between a cold frame and a hoop house. And if you want, you can go on my channel, and I've got videos on cold frames as well, and you can see what those are like, okay? All right, and then the last question from Carolyn is, can I dig up my pepper plant and bring it indoors for the winter? Yes, you can. I've heard of, I haven't done that myself. I'm actually going to do it this year because we've got some peppers that we planted really late. If you watch my garden tour from last week, you'll see those. We planted them really late. I had them for a course that I was filming, and I couldn't throw them away. And so we've got them, and they're only about that tall. I'm going to bring those in, and we're going to keep them in the garage over the winter, and then we will take them back out in the spring, and they should take off and produce really well. And you can usually do that for at least 1 year, maybe 2 years with those pepper plants before they finally kind of burn out and go away. Okay? All right. I think that's it, my friends. Thank you for being here. I appreciate everybody coming. Just a quick reminder that this was all in celebration of our new mini course that is available in the Gardening Academy, which is extending your growing season using hoop houses. It's about 55 minutes long. I teach you how to grow or how to build 3 different types of hoop houses. We talk about how to use them, timing, how to manage them, all of that kind of stuff. So this is a great little course, and it is one of 40 different courses that we have in the Gardening Academy. And along with that, we also have live Q&A sessions where you guys can come, and these are Zoom sessions. so you can actually interact with me and ask me questions, planting guides, and all that kind of stuff for the basement bargain price of $25 a month, which for everything that you get is a super good value. And we add new mini courses every month, new Q&As every month. And so it's a great opportunity for you to become a better gardener because we grow better gardeners at the Gardening Academy. So I would love it if you guys would come and join us and check out that Hoop House course. So there's a link in the description of this video that will take you over to the page that tells you more about the course on hoop houses, and then lets you sign up for the Gardening Academy. So go sign up on that. Okay. And again, big thank you to Honest Seed Company for sponsoring all the prizes, 15 different prizes. I will send an email out in the next day or so to all of the winners with the information that you need to redeem your prize. So you don't need to contact me. I will contact you, and we'll do that. So thanks again to Honest Seed, and thank you everybody for being here. I saw as many as 150 people, so I appreciate you being here. And yeah, don't forget to hit the like button before you leave. So thanks. All right, guys, I appreciate it. Everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy the rest of your fall garden and the last of your summer garden. We're going to can tomatoes tomorrow. So everybody have a great weekend. Okay. Oh, Inkby's saying, darn, you missed it. That's okay. There's a replay. As soon as we finish, the replay will be on so you can watch it. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. Everybody have a great weekend. Happy gardening. See you later.